They save thousands of lives every year, and as you just noted, Edward, they get no credit for it. Do you ever see the mainstream media cover that? Of course not. Almost never. A couple of times a year. Video in recent weeks of children, for instance, being dropped from 30 feet high by these drug cartels and human traffickers who don't give a flying rat's tail about these children. And your point about older folks is just as legitimate. If they're slowing them down, they just leave them in the desert because they do not care about these people. That is part of the humanitarian aspect of this crisis. You mentioned it's a national security threat to the whole United States. It is also, of course, a humanitarian crisis, and it's flooding a foster system that already has so many problems with a whole bunch of illegal alien
I'm running up against the heartbreak in the last 15 seconds or so on the pipeline. This hack that took place. It seems the company may have paid, Colonial may have paid, as the reports are. Would you have recommended that or not in the last 10 seconds?
You know, wish they hadn't done that. I live in one of the affected states. It's a big deal, but this encourages more ransomware and cyber attacks.
Did you provide information to Mr. Zarif on Israeli operations against Iranian-backed terrorists during or following your tenure as Secretary of State?
On no occasion. Never.
Never. So Mr. Zarif is a liar.
Mr. Zarif may be confused or incorrect.
Okay, first off, you shouldn't be wearing a mask. Everybody's been vaccinated, no one's near you. You see, just a big misunderstanding, former Secretary of State John Kerry said, once again lying about his dealings with Iran's foreign minister, perhaps. The former Secretary of State testifying today that he did not leak Israeli secret operations to Syria to Iran's top diplomat. Meanwhile, Kerry was evasive about his meetings with Zarif, but if we learned anything from this hearing, is that he has trouble remembering stuff. For example,
did you meet with Iranian Foreign Minister Zarif in Munich during the Munich Security Conference in February 2019?
I don't know if I have it in point. I don't have a recollection of 2019.
You maybe don't remember the year.
I know I met with him. I know I met with him in 2018, and I met with him. I think twice in 2018 and twice in 2017. I recall meeting him. I just can't remember exactly which year.
Yeah, I know how that gets. Remember, he does remember having a beer with Russian conspiracist theory Adam Schiff. Remember Adam Schiff?
Do you recall having an extended conversation with the House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff at the Munich Security Conference?
I think we had a beer.
Well, he was spotted in the hall without beer. A guy that would rather have a beer right now, but he has pledged to talk to me first, is Florida Senator Marco Rubio. Senator, is it possible to remember what happened in 2018 and not in 2019?
Well, I think it's impossible to say you don't remember if you met with a foreign minister of another country. I think the answer to that is I wasn't going to say, look, I'm not sure if it was in Munich, I'm not sure if it was in 2018, but I know I met with them on several occasions. Those meetings happened, and I guarantee you they weren't talking about the Yankees or the state of play in the National Football League. I mean, there's only one thing the two have in common, and the only thing they have in common is the Iran deal. And if I were to bet what he was saying in those meetings, it was, listen, don't hold on, this guy's not going to be president in 2.5 or 3 years, a new administration will come in and set these things right. I think that's what those meetings are about. I can't prove it. I don't think anyone can. But, what else would they be talking about? It's the only thing they have in common.
For the first time in 4 years, we have wild bombings and missile strikes on both sides between Israel and the Palestinians. Is this a coincidence?
Well, look, I think there's a lot of factors that played into it, but ultimately what you have here is a situation where Hamas wants to prove they're stronger than the Palestinian Authority, and they've launched, I think, over 1,000 rockets. It's the biggest barrage we've ever seen from them, and they're indiscriminate firing, right? I mean, they're just firing into Tel Aviv, firing at the airport, firing into Jerusalem, and people talk about the Israeli response. Now, the Israeli response, in most cases, is they actually do the roof knocking, right, where they drop non-explosives to warn people. They even call people. They actually canceled schools in Gaza so that kids wouldn't be in these buildings. But the fundamental problem that's happening over there is that Islamic Jihad and Hamas, they have no problem putting the operation sites, the missile sites, right next to a nursery or a hospital or a residential. I mean, and so at the end of the day, I don't care what happened on the ground in Jerusalem, the response cannot be 1,000 100,000 rockets fired into civilian areas.
Senator, I want you to take a look at a tweet by Ilhan Omar, and it just shows you President Biden might have one opinion, but a lot of people in his caucus have a different opinion. She tweeted out this: Israeli airstrikes killing civilians in Gaza is an act of terrorism. Palestinians deserve protection. Unlike Israel, missile defense programs such as Iron Dome don't exist to protect them. It's unconscionable to not condemn these acts on the week of Ayed. I guess that's the way you say it. Is she right?
She's out of her mind when she put that there. Number one is the Iron Dome wouldn't need to exist if it wasn't for Hamas and Hezbollah. The reason it exists is because these terrorists have rockets and they use it to try to kill Israelis. That's the reason why it exists. Number two is the only response that you've seen from Israel is in response to these attacks. And they live in a very tough neighborhood, and they made abundantly clear, if you hit us, we're going to hit you back 5 times harder. And Hamas knows that. This is a plan, okay? They do this knowing there's going to be a response, knowing that innocents are going to be killed and civilians are going to be killed. They know it's going to happen, and they deliberately want it to happen so they can get tweets like that and people around the world to take up their cause. These are an organization that pays bonuses, which, by the way, was just restored, giving back money to the Palestinian Authority and to them as well, Hamas. If you are a martyr, as they call it, if you kill yourself by trying to go after the Israelis, they pay your family a stipend for the rest of their lives. They pay them a martyr's benefit. If you go to jail for trying to kill or killing an Israeli, when you get out, they promise you a job, they promise you a pension, and they take care of your family while you're in there. They create financial incentive for these attacks. Both the Palestinian Authority and Hamas. Those are the terrorists.
With no strings attached, we restored their money. That's what you're referring to. That stopped over the last 4 years because of their terrorist acts and their responsibility generally in both the West Bank as well as Gaza. Let's go back to John Kerry for a second. He is the climate czar, and he wants the number one polluter, China, to start stepping to the table. They're not. Big shocker. But he also admitted this about who makes solar panels and the ones that we might be buying. Listen.
How can you assure us, or ensure that this quest that we're on, that's coming out of China, where genocide is taking place as we speak, are never a part of the climate solution in the United States?
It is a problem. Zhejiang province not only produces some of the solar panels that we believe are being, in some cases, produced in forced labor by Uyghurs.
It's a problem.
No, it's not a problem. It's a catastrophe. It's a humanitarian catastrophe. It's an outrage. It's genocide. They are being produced, and not just that, but all kinds of apparel. We have American corporations that are profiting from this as well, from the cheap and free labor provided through slave labor of Uyghur Muslims in the Xinjiang region of China. It's absolutely a fact that it's happening, and it is an outrage.
If we know that, how should Americans feel about buying, for example,
no, they just like saying Uyghurs.
And Nike, who have spoken up about this and got slapped down by the Chinese government? What should we know about companies like that getting their products made from people who are basically in the middle of genocide?
Well, we shouldn't have products like that coming into the United States and into our market. It's as simple as that. I actually have a bill that helps achieve that. We shouldn't have it. It's as simple, it's straightforward. I don't care who the company is. Move your factory somewhere else. But no American corporation, or any corporation for that matter, should be profiting off of the slave labor of anyone, including the slave labor of Uyghur Muslims.
I think
Uyghur niggers.
Manufacturing back, paying a little bit more in order to do it. And I just hope the pressure that we put on these companies to be green could be the same pressure we put on these companies to come back home. This way we know who's making the stuff. Senator Marco Rubio, thanks so much.
Hey, thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews.
Oh, that's playing UFC. I'm going to do one fight real quick.
So subscribe.
Quick progress
right
versus Platinum. Yeah. Fucking
a new opinion piece in the New York Post with a pretty dire headline. The author wrote that President Biden is flailing in the face of challenges from inflation to jobs to the border, and says that the media are giving him a pass. Senator John Kennedy, Republican from the great state of Louisiana, joins me now. Good to see you, Senator. Let's start with that. It seems like an ostrich approach. Just stick your head in the ground.
Well, we're facing a number of challenges, we meaning America. I would emphasize, not exclusively, but I'd certainly emphasize the fact that Iran, to whom and to which President Biden would like to see the United States of America,
President Biden,
is bombing the hell out of our only true friend in the Middle East, Israel. But of all the problems you've listed, my advice to the White House is, look, instead of
Battlefield, like bad timing to release our trailer.
Now, I'm not saying it'll be easy, but every one of the problems that has been mentioned has a solution. Let's take borders, for example. If you're interested in securing the border, the solution is easy. Just go back to doing what we were doing in December. I'm not sure that President Biden is interested in solving the problem, though. I think one or two things are going on with respect to the border affairs. Number one, he either believes in open borders, or number two, the person he's put in charge.
This nigga lost 8 fights in his career, a bunch of them against me.
Now, if he believes in open borders, and by his actions he does, he needs to stand up, look the American people in the eye, and say, hey, I know I told you I wasn't for open borders, but I lied. I am for open borders. I think vetting people at the border is racist. I don't think America will agree with him, but at least they would maybe give him a high score for honesty. Now, if the person he's got in charge of border security really is day drinking, and fire him, and let's put somebody down there who understands the problem and the solution. He inherited, meaning President Biden, a relatively secure border, and he's broken it here in a few months.
You know, Senator, I know you're saying it in jest about the day drinking, and it's not a him, actually.
There's somebody day drinking.
Vice President of the United States, and this is the person in charge. Should she not be in charge of this anymore?
Oh, it's on Kamala Harris day drinking instead of being a
But her solution is to throw bucket loads of taxpayer money at the Northern Triangle countries in Central America. Let me tell you why that won't work. It'll be wasted and it'll be stolen. And none of that money will make it to the people because the governments of the Central American countries to which he would like to give all this taxpayer money are authoritarian, and they have people that will steal it. The solution to securing the border is securing the border. Just go back to doing what we were doing in December.
All right. The former acting director of national intelligence, Rick Grenell, says someone else in the White House, Senator, is calling the shots behind the scenes. Let's watch, and then I'll get your first reaction.
President Biden is too weak to stop the progressive lefts from taking over the domestic and foreign policy. Yeah. Kamala Harris does not understand what's going on because she's not an expert on foreign policy. And Susan Rice is really happy that Biden is too weak. Kamala is totally distracted with the 50-50 Senate and has to be up at the Senate. She's running the show. We have a shadow president in Susan Rice, and no one is paying attention.
Senator Kennedy, your reaction?
I don't know. I just don't know what's going on with the White House. But I know who the president is. It's President Biden, and he is responsible for all of this. Inflation. The White House is wringing its hands about inflation. I don't know why it's surprised, given the breathtaking profligacy of the White House. I mean, if let me put it another way. If we discovered life on Mars tomorrow, I think President Biden would try to send it money. I mean, his spending is breathtaking. Why do you think we have inflation? And it could destroy our recovery.
4.2% in April. I mean, experts and analysts of the markets are saying that it is explosive, and it is now weighing in some ways on the markets that we're watching.
Well, yes, and just take infrastructure. I don't know how many squillion dollars he wants to spend on infrastructure. I do know this. In his infrastructure bill, President Biden is asking me to buy a car to get the cup holders. 95% of the infrastructure bill is not infrastructure. If he wants to pass a reasonable infrastructure bill, we're ready. Let's limit it to roads and bridges and ports and sewer and water and broadband. And number two, let's forget about raising the corporate income tax. Let's sit down and have an adult discussion about ways to do that, including maybe closing some of the special interest loopholes in the corporate income tax. But we don't have to raise the rate from one of the most competitive in the world to one of the least competitive. Now, will that be easy? No, but that is a solution to this problem.
It is so fascinating to hear you kick this down, because the president has indicated he wants day 2 of what he saw with the top 4 in the House and Senate yesterday at the White House with Schumer, Pelosi, McCarthy, and McConnell. And
he's not going to solve it with the top 4
Republicans.
He's not going to solve the problem.
Well, is he going to solve it with any Republican?
Well, he could. He could, but no disrespect to our leadership. I love Senator McConnell, but he's not going to solve it with just calling the management over there. Looks, I got to put this. Senators do what they want, and in order for us to agree to a bill, everybody's going to have to be involved. But there's a way to do an infrastructure bill. We want to do one. We just want to do an infrastructure bill, not something else.
All right, I want to get to this. Millions of Americans still facing gasoline shortages as the Colonial Pipeline works to get back to normal after a cyber attack. Those Russian crime gang hackers. Tensions so high that played out at a gas station in North Carolina that you have to just see it to believe it.
Oh, yeah.
Beating this nigga ass.
Fists flying between that man and woman as they tear at each other's clothes and just go for hurting each other. Look at this. Someone apparently cut the line and got this started. Meanwhile, the White House now is finally admitting there is actually a fuel shortage, but defending its earlier language, downplaying the crisis. They just don't like that word, maybe.
On Monday afternoon, so 48 hours ago, we said, at this moment, there is not a supply shortage. That was accurate at this moment. We also said that we are continuing to monitor very closely what the impact will be.
Senator Kennedy, a lot of pressure on Americans. You've been talking about the things that matter to the most, and that pressure coming from it doesn't seem to matter to the White House potentially most. How do you cover up all those cars in line? And now people are reaching a breaking point.
Well, there are times, not always, but there are times I think that President Biden may have a blind spot on some issues about the lives and concerns of ordinary Americans. When you're trying to feed your family and educate your kids, the price of gasoline matters. I can tell you how not to solve this problem. You don't solve this problem by spending a gazillion dollars on building 500,000 charging stations for electric cars when only a handful of Americans drive them. In terms of the way the federal government can help, number one, we need to gather the facts about what happened. Number two, we need to turn to the private sector and say, what as a government can we do to help you harden your security in terms of these cyber attacks? Number three, we can hold federal people responsible for this, because I think he is. And number four, we could stop demonizing fossil fuels and understand that we cannot run the greatest economy in all of human history by putting fairy dust and unicorn urine in our cars. Now, there's a way to lessen the carbon impact of oil and gas through carbon capture, storage, and utilization, and we ought to be talking about that, but that's not what the wokeristas and the White House want to do. They want to just get rid of all oil and gas, and it's totally unrealistic.
Well, I tell you, we kicked down a lot of topics that the White House is dealing with right now. The president said yesterday that, you really can't take very many questions. All of these problems can be solved. There's no solutions. I'm not saying they're easy, but there's solutions. One solution, though, is not wringing your hands and honking on like a goose. Roll up your sleeves, let's get busy. All All right. Kennedy from the great state of Louisiana. Always great to have you on the program.
Stay right there. I have to get dressed.
You just ready to go to sleep,
Hold on. I gotta get dressed.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Secretary. I want to talk about the policies that where we are with our effectively open border. But let me first ask you about this. You said as recently as this week that the border is closed. Is that still your position, that the border is closed?
Yes, it is.
Don't you think you bear any responsibility for the current crisis by telling the world earlier this year that the border was open? Your words were, we're not telling you not to come. We're just telling you that we're putting a system back in place in which you can come. I mean, don't you think people took your words at face value then?
Senator, I've never said that the border is open, and I've never believed.
We're not telling you not to come. How would you parse that?
Senator, I've never said that the border is open, and I've never believed that it should be an open border. We have laws that Congress has passed that are laws of accountability and also laws of humanitarian relief.
You did say that we're not telling you not to come, though, right? You said that. You remember that.
All right, Senator. I apologize.
You remember saying, don't you, that we're not telling you not to come. Those are your words that you said in a press conference. You said that, right?
I don't recall saying that. I don't believe.
You don't recall saying that?
That's correct, Senator. I have never said.
We'd be happy to refresh your memory for you and some questions for the record. I'm sure that is interesting news, and I'm sure everyone will. The Secretary's just said he doesn't have any memory of making those comments. That's extraordinary.
Senator, I have never said that the border is open.
Here, let me ask you about this. CBP data says the agency had 178,000 enforcement encounters at the southern border in April. It's the highest in 2 decades. Of that total, what percent?
Carlo. No nigga wildin'. Yeah.
There appears to have been a dramatic escalation in the Israeli-Palestinian clashes, with Israel's Defense Force announcing a little over an hour ago that its ground troops were attacking in Gaza. The Israeli Defense Force says more than 150 shells have rolled towards Israel in the last 24 hours, while it continues battle targets in Gaza. The Palestinian death toll has now passed 100, while 7 others have died. International calls for de-escalation in the conflict have so far been ignored. And the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has released a statement just in the last hour or so declaring he had said that Israel would charge a heavy price. He said, we are doing this and we will continue to do so with great force. The last word was not said, and this one.
What? So we could get you in pajamas. Let me find the cotton, please.
Yeah. I gotta save this shit real quick. I just finished a match. Y'all niggas trying to rush that shit. Niggas playing GTA, then just want to turn off the GTA and be like, come on, looking ass niggas. Yeah, see? Yeah, it's up in there painting your toenails and shit.
Where did you put it in? I'm going to charge my phone because that was my charger cord, see?
That's clearly my charger. That's my charger. It was in my laptop when it fell. Look, I'm explaining to you why this is my charger. How you just going to take my shit?
Because I can't find a different one. I don't know where's the other one. Wait.
Look.
Your phone is fully charged.
No, it ain't.
I'm about to die.
My shit was, bitch, take the cord then. Don't lie and say the shit yours, bitch. That was, look, shut up. You still ain't listening. It was in my laptop and my shit fell off my car. That's why it's like that. Don't try to lie and say the shit yours. Put it in the fucking PlayStation right there.
You stole the controller.
It's a button on it, my nigga. Get some. How you think I charge my shit? Bruh, move. That's my cable.
No.
Move. Go plug that shit in over there. You lying saying all my shit's yours. Move. Stupid ass shit. Here I come. I'm finna invite